Hey, real quick, I just watched the new animated Death of Superman movie. I think it came out a couple weeks ago. Just not getting around to it. I liked it. It was a lot of fun. It was superheroes punching each other, action, snappy banner, Green Lantern talking to Batman, Superman fighting. It was a lot of fun. The main thing for me, though, is that it was actually a big nostalgia trip because it reminded me of the original comics it was based on that came out in the early 90s. If you were reading comic books at the time, Superman was not the most popular character. He's always the most well-known character, but not necessarily the most popular. The 90s was a decade-long era of the grim, dark, gritty superhero. You had characters like Spawn and Venom, Wolverine, Punisher, Deadpool. These characters really came into their own in the 90s and were sort of celebrated for, being superheroes that weren't really superheroes. Ooh, they're dangerous. They kill people. They're sexy. And Batman survived that. He did well because he can do that. Even Spider-Man got dark and gritty for a few years, but it just never worked well on Superman. So he was just kind of there, and we took him for granted. That's the thing. We take Superman for granted until they killed him. And they killed him bad. They beat the shit out of him. That's comics, man. So it really had this crazy reaction. People went nuts. I remember seeing it on the local news, and they announced that Superman died. And it was like, what? And then I went to the comic book shop, and I was not a collector at that time. I was just a comic book fan. But this drove people to comic book shops like crazy to figure out what happened. It also turned people into collectors, and people started buying comic books in bulk, and the company started overprinting things and created this bubble. And it kind of turned into a thing that didn't help out the industry at all. But it's another story. But it really reminded people what Superman means to us in the real world and to the comic book characters that he worked with. And it was like losing a friend. It was like, hey, yo, man, you remember Johnny from high school? Johnny died. Johnny died? Man, I ain't seen Johnny in 20 years. I don't care about Johnny. But I care now that he's dead. I'm missing him now. What's up, Johnny? How you doing? Rest in peace. So it was crazy to see a coffin and to see a dead body, and they put him in that coffin. It was nuts. Then the story turned into, the meat of the story was about the world without Superman, a funeral for a friend. How do people cope watching the Kents mourn their son, watching Lois mourn her fiance at the time? And people kind of got shook up and realized that Superman is necessary. Superman is more important than Batman. Superman is more important than all of the Image comic characters. That you remember Image Comics? It was a very 90s type movement. But it was a cool thing, and this movie reminded me of that. And we take Superman for granted because he's been around so long. 80 years we've had him, and some of those stories get old. But Superman is a complex character. He's three characters. He's a refugee from another planet, Kal-El. He's a farm boy from Kansas, Clark. And he's a savior of humanity, Superman. And he has issues like balancing those things out. When the right writer gets his hands on him and can really milk those things, I think they get it right. So he's more than just the big blue Boy Scout telling kids to drink their milk and stay away from drugs. Good things, that's always good advice. But in the right hands, he can be more than that. So check out the flick. Another flick you should check out is Superman versus the Elite, also based on a really good comic. And again, it's really showing us how Superman stands up against these more extreme type heroes and how he's not too old-fashioned for us. He's actually kind of what we need in the world right now. In real life, we could use some Superman. So check out the flick. The animation's just okay. If you watch Young Justice, that animation is better. But the fight scenes are great. It's fun. It's eye candy. They switched up some of the elements. They updated it. In the original comic book, it was the Justice League America, which is a different lineup than the Justice League we know. But in this new movie, they bring in the heavy gun. So you see Superman. Of course you see Superman, but you see Batman fight Doomsday. You see Wonder Woman fight Doomsday. You see Aquaman and Green Lantern and Hawkman and the Flash fight Doomsday. That didn't happen in the original comic book. So that's a fun treat to watch Doomsday. Just no spoilers, but Doomsday rips through all of them, and ultimately him and Superman have it out. But the next chapter will be what happens after Superman dies. And again, spoilers, but it's a 25-year-old storyline. You're ruining that. 4 different Supermen show up claiming to be the one true Superman. None of them are. And some of them are good and some are corny, but it's all fun. And then the one true Superman finally does show up and you're like, yeah, Superman, we need him. We need him. But this is fun. Check it out. Let me know what you think. I'm looking forward to the second half of the story. Go Comics. Bye.